everybody. So, big news. We're finishing World War II today, getting out of this war. So, let's recap what we talked about yesterday. We did slides 59 through 60. We talked about VE Day, which was Victory in Europe Day. By the way, you don't have a bell ringer today. Just finish off the unit, finish off the slides, and then we will review Wednesday and Thursday for the test on Friday. Okay, so VE Day, Victory in Europe. Done, have conquered Europe. Soviets came in from one side, French and United States and British troops came in from the other side. Hitler's going to commit suicide. Mussolini dies. Hitler commits suicide. Franklin Roosevelt passes away. And we have a new president, slide 61. That new president is Harry Truman. He was Franklin Roosevelt's vice president. So, this slide is called VJ Day. And when we talked about the Manhattan Project, Franklin Roosevelt kept that a secret, so much so that Harry Truman didn't even know about this at all. By the time he became president, he didn't know that the atomic bomb was actually a real thing. He never knew that we were working on it, and he didn't know that the horrors and the destruction that this weapon could cause, which that's important because I think if he would have understood the strength of this weapon, I don't think he would have used it. But we can't go back and change history. So Japan is refusing to surrender. They will not give up. Italy's done. Germany's done. J of the jig, that is the only thing left is Japan. And so Harry Truman has to decide if he wants to use this weapon that he just found out about against the Japanese Empire because they refuse to surrender. Now he has advisors who are working with him to tell him, what this was. We've been working on it for X amount of years. This is what the weapon does. Nobody knew the true destruction though. We were warned against this by Albert Einstein, which we've talked about before, but he uses it anyway. So what we have to decide now is once he chooses, okay, Japan refuses to surrender. They won't give up. This war is over with. We would like to be done. Do I warn them that I'm going to use this weapon, or do I just drop this weapon on their cities? He tells Japan and the Japanese Empire that you need to surrender. You must surrender. And they don't. He doesn't tell them that you need to surrender or I will drop this bomb on you. He says you need to surrender. That's it. Japan doesn't surrender. August 6, 1945. Harry Truman orders the plane called the Enola Gay, which I'll show you pictures, carrying an atomic bomb to drop that atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. Now, Tokyo has been bombed throughout the entire war, basically. Just bombs, just explosives. Hiroshima was chosen because it had a large population, but not as large as Tokyo, and it would cause immediate damage on their population of Japan. So the Enola Gay was the airplane, and it was flying over Hiroshima, dropped the atomic bomb. 80,000 residents died immediately. Immediately. I'm talking like the heat from the atomic bomb. They melt. People melt. If you're closer, it's like you turn to ash, and there's stories of people walking by like buildings and people who were just burnt up, like the wind from the explosion like blew against them and they turned to dust, ash, and their figures of the ash was on, like an outline of their bodies was on these buildings. This book right here, Hiroshima, is a primary source written by the individual who was living during this time, and he's getting first-hand accounts from people who survived Hiroshima. And I have a bunch of markings in here, and it is devastating. He talks about there's this man who was helping a person. There was like some boat or something by the dock. And this man walked over to help this person that was in the boat, like, let's get out, I'll take you to the hospital. And so he reaches out to help this person, and as soon as he grabs the hand, the skin slips right off. Their skin just slips off. People's eyeballs were melting completely. They were blind. The burns that they would experience you've all heard of first degree, second degree, third degree burns. These are burns that we have never experienced before. They are immediately the people encountering radiation, and we don't know the effects of radiation yet. Women who are pregnant are going to have deformed children when they're born. Their heads are going to be smaller. People are going to develop different types of cancers. That we are still living with these effects. There's also stories of people just like walking around. Their eyes are open, their faces are blotted by the flash because it's so bright. If you're very close to it, it is such a bright light of this atomic bomb. And then you have the mushroom cloud and everything, but like you are burnt, and they're walking around not feeling anything. Almost like when we were talking about liberating the concentration camps, and they couldn't speak. Like the people just couldn't feel happiness because of how horrible the experiences that they have just gone through was for them. So these people that are walking around are silent. Some people are just sitting on the side. I mean, homes are just destroyed, sitting on the side of the streets, like outside of your home that is no longer there, just like silent. Of course, hospitals are going to be just flooded with people if they're still standing because it's been completely destroyed. The eyebrows of some were burned off and the skin hung from their faces and hands. Others, because of the pain, held their arms up as if carrying something in both hands. Some were vomiting as they walked. No expression whatsoever. And this is Hiroshima. He had to keep reminding himself that these are human beings. Okay, and the reason why I say that is because 4 days later, on August 9th, the United States is going to drop another atomic bomb on the city called Nagasaki, and 40,000 people are going to die here. So Hiroshima, 80,000 people, Nagasaki, 40,000 people die from the atomic bomb. Finally, after 2 atomic bombs, Japan surrenders, and World War II is over. So I pray that we never experience these weapons ever in real life, because civilized societies, it destroys them. It destroys civilized societies. And how Japan made it out okay is because the United States came right in, and this is the next slide, and we changed their whole government, because they couldn't themselves because they were destroyed by these 2 atomic bombs. And so we came in and we're like, oh, this is how you're going to do things now. The typical like American imperialism way of like, oh, we're going to take over and you're going to do things how we want you to do. And that's why we're friends with them today, is because we basically forced them into listening to us and doing things our way. And we're friends with Japan today. We are friends with them. I have pictures on the slide that I want you to look at as well. There's the mushroom cloud. There's just the destruction from the bombs. This is the airplane, the Enola Gay, which was carrying the bombs. I believe like one of them was called like Little Man and Fat Boy. I think that's what they named the bombs when they were dropping them, because they need a name. And these are just like the destruction, obviously. So, you can look up and find your own on your own time pictures of the destruction, and just like, there's kids with like growths from the radiation that they've experienced, and it's horrific. And I really pray that we never ever have to experience these weapons ever, because they're awful and they destroy things. And why do you need that much destruction? Why? The war was over. I'm not the one making the decision, but why? The last slide here, and I'm going to run out of time pretty soon, but the last slide, we have 2 vocab words, United Nations and the Potsdam Conference. So the United Nations was formed similar to like the League of Nations, but this one actually worked and functioned. So the United Nations, 50 countries met in San Francisco to create this world government, so we never, ever have a war like this ever again. Today, the United Nations faces a whole bunch of different problems like poverty, wealth equality, education, climate, things like that. They want to fix. They have goals that they establish every single 10 years. They come back and say, what do you want to work on these 10 years? And then they come back after the 10 years and say, did we do anything? Did we fix it? If not, we'll do that again for the next 10 years. These countries meet and they try to basically fix the world's problems. Today, they're working on the pandemic, obviously. So these countries are coming together and working on how to slow the spread and find a vaccine. That's the United Nations, just like the League of Nations, but the United Nations actually works and functions, and we still have it today. The Potsdam Conference, we have Potsdam is a city in Germany, and the leaders of the Allied nations met in Potsdam, Germany, and they were like, all right, the war is over with. What's next? So at the Yalta Conference, why Yalta, end of war, we have to divide up Germany like a little pie. And at the Yalta Conference, we decided what to do with Germany. Well, the war wasn't totally over yet. At the Potsdam Conference, if you switch around the letters, it looks like post. Post means after. So Potsdam Conference is after the war. And they basically just decided to reinforce the decisions made at the Yalta Conference. So this is the time for us to say, hey, Joseph Stalin, remember when you promised that you would have fair and free elections? And he's going to say, sure, yeah, absolutely. I definitely will do that. Definitely. When they leave this meeting, Harry Truman says, okay, so we just defeated Nazism. We just defeated fascism. Our next threat from the moment this war has ended is communism, because Joseph Stalin cannot be trusted. So that is where we're at. We are directly moving from the Potsdam Conference into the Cold War because Joseph Stalin cannot be trusted. So they all meet and decide what they're going to do at the end of the war. They want to reinforce the decisions that they've made and say, hey, Joseph Stalin, please listen. Please, can you keep up with what we said? We need to do this the right way. In addition to reinforcing what the decisions made were at Yalta, we have sent people over into Japan, like I said before, to fix their economy because they can't, because they just got 2 bombs dropped on them. So we send people over, and that person is Douglas MacArthur, and he is there to write a new constitution for them. He is there to create an entirely new government and economic system for Japan. So you're going to do things our way because we don't want you to go to war with us ever again. So you're going to have that democratic peace. You're going to be a democracy, just like we are, because if we're democracies, we don't fight each other. Some of the Japanese military members were put on trial and executed. Hideki Tojo, he was put on trial and he was executed for his war crimes. And that last sentence on there, the U.S. faced many challenges in rebuilding Europe because, like, we can't just leave them to do that themselves. They had a whole war in Europe, and the Nazis took over in these places. Like, we can't just let them do this by themselves. So we have to be there to help them. In addition, we can like force our ideas on other countries like we are in Japan. Every country does it. It's not just us. The United States faced many challenges in rebuilding Europe, and tensions would only increase between us and the Soviets, and it would only get worse in the coming years. This is it. We fought Hitler. We fought fascism and Nazism. Our next threat right away, as soon as the war ends, is defeating communism in the Soviet Union, because he's going to push it, and he's going to start developing nuclear weapons because we have them, so why can't he? Right? So we're going to enter the Cold War with the Soviet Union right away. All right, finish the slides, finish your summaries, and then we will review for 2 days, and then you'll turn in your notes, and we'll have our test on Friday. All right, done with World War II. Bye, guys.